Hey everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to teach you about one of the new features of iClone 5.3, the ability to bake reach keys into your animations. The ability to bake constraint keys into your animation means you can now create motion clips like this bike riding one here. Once you have that clip, you can export it to the animation software of your choice via the iClone pipeline. I'm going to start off with Chuck here. My end goal is to get him doing a sort of fireball move like in Street Fighter. Okay, so the first thing I want to do here is to get Chuck into his initial position for the fireball. To do that, I'm going to enter into the motion key editor and make some changes to Chuck's position for my first frame. I'll make a couple of motion key edits here to lower his center of gravity, as well as separate his legs. I want to move his hips slightly back so they can spring forward when he's ready to release his fireball. From there, I want to move his arms back as well. His front arm should be a little forward and facing the other side of his body, while I'll place the rear arm on the top and lower his head. Also important is to rotate his upper back slightly forward to give the impression that he's powering up for his fireball. Once my motion key edits are done for the initial pose, I'm going to import in my fireball. This will just be a dummy, so I'm going to use a simple sphere. Once that's in, I'll want to scale it down and then position it in the appropriate place between his hands to use as a reference. I'm just going to change the pivot point for the sphere to the middle for simplicity, and then what I want to do is make two duplicates of that same sphere. Each of these duplicates will be the reach target for Chuck's hands to keep them in a spherical shape around the dummy. I'm just control-click dragging to get these duplicates here. Next, what I want to do is attach both of these spheres to the main center sphere. Once that's done, I want to enter into the motion key editor and select the reach target tool. I want to assign each hand node to a respective sphere. Don't worry about the position change when I do this, because I can fix it later. Once I'm done both hands, I need to make sure that they have the reach object and rotation options selected in the reach subnode panel. This ensures that any rotation and movement I make to those dummy spheres will apply to the hands as well. You'll notice now that I can move the child sphere and only one hand will move. What I'll do is set both of those spheres as dummies, and they should disappear from view. If not, you can press Ctrl D to toggle dummy visibility. From here, I want to position and rotate each one of the invisible spheres back to a position that puts my hands back where they were before. Don't worry about what the sphere is doing here, just pay attention to your hand position. Once that's done, you'll see that I can move my main sphere and both hands will follow. Now I can make Chuck do some Tai Chi this way, but let's move on to the fireball. You'll also notice that my feet slide around a bit, which isn't really what I want. To remedy this, I can go back into my motion key editor and lock the feet nodes to the original. Now for the animation. As you may have guessed, I'm going to manipulate the sphere as a fireball in order to take advantage of the reactive human IK movement. In the prop puppet panel, you can see that when I preview the horizontal movement, that even slight mouse movements can cause Chuck to go flying off in the wrong direction. It's always a good idea when using prop puppet to customize the movement and rotation values. I'll just go into the advanced panel here and select a basic movement template. You can see that this one also has a Z-axis value, so I'll just delete that and lower the value for the X-axis to something a bit more manageable. A lower value translates into less strength for mouse movement. Once I think I've got a good idea of how I want my movement to go by previewing, I can hit the record button and give it a try. My first try seems a little bit weak, so what I can do is simply hit Ctrl Z to undo the first try and try one more time. I'll use a bit more mouse power on this one to make it look a bit more dynamic. Once I'm done, I'm going to open up the timeline and open Chuck's motion layer track as well as the transform track for the sphere. You can see that there are already keyframes here from the prop puppet. What I'm going to do now is a bit of motion layer editing to complete my animation. Everything looks good up until the point where Chuck leans back to charge his fireball, so I'll go back there and add a keyframe in his motion track. What I want to do next is move forward on the timeline, then go into the motion layer editor once again, and move Chuck's hips forward to give an impression of momentum. You can see once I finish that you can really see the leaning momentum of Chuck as he moves forward with his hips. It could be a good door smashing animation the way it is, but let's continue on a bit. After that, I want to release my reach key a few frames after my forward momentum starts, so that the hands will gradually move off the sphere to their original positions. I'll go into the motion layer editor once again, and at that frame just select Release. You'll immediately see keys and transitions appear in the reach tracks for the hands. The length of the transition can be adjusted, as you can see the hands take a little long to release from the sphere at this time. I'll move the release keys a little forward, as well as shorten the transition period to end at exactly the keyframe where I want my final position to be. This will allow a nice transition from my reach state to my final pose. Now on that final frame, what I want to do is again use the motion layer editor to adjust my final pose. What I want to do here is get him into his post fireball stance. Then I want to move my rear arm straight across the body, and then rotate the chest to face the general direction of the fireball. I'll make a couple of other motion layer edits as well, and eventually I'll end up with a pose that looks like this. Once I play back, you can see the final result of my fireball animation. Thanks to the reach keys along with Human IK, the hand position and body movement looks pretty natural, and it was all pretty quick to do as well. Now you'll notice that in the Modify panel underneath the animation tools, there is a checkbox for Bake Constrain Key. Let's see what happens if I don't check this first. I'll open the Collect Clip track and then save my motion to test it out. I'll import in another Chuck character further back here, and then click and drag the motion from my desktop to try it out. You can notice with this animation that my natural Human IK motion is totally gone, and that all that remains is a simple animation done with what looks like two motion key edits. The reach data is all gone, which was integral to the smooth look of the animation before. So let's go back and save that motion once again, this time toggling the Bake Constrain key on. I'll follow the same procedure as before by right-clicking in the Collect Clip track, and save my track once again. Now when I apply this animation to Chuck, you can see the natural back and forth sway, along with the more accurate positioning of the hands. And that's it! We now have a fireball motion. All that it needs now is some particle effects to give it that little extra something. Once you do that, you now have a fully customizable motion clip. From there you can make it faster, slower, remove animation from certain parts, and everything else. Not to mention you can export it into FBX or BVH format for use with other animation software via the 3D Exchange pipeline. Don't forget, there are also bake keys for path animations, as well as the look at function, so check out our tutorials on those as well.